People doing it on the WebEx, but the meetings are a little more intense, I think the whole idea of people, facing each other and looking at each other when you have a meeting is much more effective.
I think you have more of a personal, for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
You get more out of it.
Good
This
to
is
go.
totally convenient.
And then you want to put this over here.
You're done.
You want to share over there. Is it that?
It's open. I think it's open.
There you go.
There we go.
Put this over here.
I like to click.
I have to
like
miss
that.
someone.
No clicking.
Right here.
I just do it. I can do it.
Yes, you can mute anybody you want. You cannot unmute them. You can only see how you hover over and it says request unmute. All right, let me mute us.
I forgot to look with my daughter about my Christian and vacation at Florida. I love this. It's a company called Sugar Boo.
Yeah.
And this is their motto. It's like put good things into the world.
Mhm.
So she's like, oh, my brother. That's so nice.
Very nice.
Nice that she thought about me. I don't know how things are. Did Jason ever say he got his package? Did he ever call or something?
No, I think he called me yesterday.
Okay, that's good.
It looks like we're ready to go. All right, I'll see you.
Looks a bit different. How's your computer upstairs? Are you doing anything?
Oh, that's right. We got the computers updated, so that's why it looks,
Yeah, well, this is a different computer. This is a whole, you
yeah.
took mine.
Oh,
This one's thinner. The other one was white, like
no,
this
it
is the
looks, it
whole
looks brighter and it looks more,
crisp.
more friendly.
Ray,
It's
Ray, can you confirm that I'm sharing the presentation with you?
pretty quick. Like when you type something in,
I have it.
Kelly was
Okay, thank you.
asking yesterday. I'm like, no, it's pretty good. You type something in, it comes up, it doesn't lag. I think it's between the new computer and then upgrading our internet, which I have to do at home. I knocked your bill down 65. I'm still paying 252.
Giancarlo, you're unmuted. Just FYI.
People are joining.
I guess we're getting started.
I have the agenda here.
Yeah.
Oh, and underneath it, just so you know, you can look at it. This is the paper you did yesterday.
Okay.
It's university
Okay.
stuff.
Donald, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
You should be muted, though. You should mute yourself. I can hear your conversation. Good morning, Julie. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Just FYI, I'm running the meeting this morning, so if this all crashes, you'll know the reason. So bear with me. Julie, we have 5 members present, which is a quorum, so we can wait for a couple more members, or we can start whenever you're ready.
Be respectful of everyone's time. Let's start. We'd like to welcome everyone to the August 11th Landmarks Commission meeting. It's nice to see everyone, even if continues to be in a virtual manner. Don, would you like to advance to the preamble? There you go. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio Open Meeting Law and Section 101.021 of the Codified Ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you keep your microphone on mute. Use the raised hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raised hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile versions and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before speaking. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking the raised hand icon again and muting your microphone. We'll be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activities are being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter via our website or email have been considered. We've also received emails from those who've provided written comment on a particular matter. We'd like to call the August 11th, 2022 Landmarks Commission meeting to order. Mr. Pettit, please call roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Anderson,
Here.
Mr. Bonezzi, Mr. Colicchia,
Here.
Mr. Dryer,
Here.
Mr. Edmund,
Here.
Director Wong, Mr. Strickland,
Here.
Mr. Tarasik,
Here.
Ms. Trott.
Here.
We are also joined today by Kevin Roberts from the Department of Law and Emily Spezia Schwiff, who is our Ohio History Corps member. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Excellent. We'll begin with our certificates of appropriateness. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll begin with a public hearing. Staff like to do a recap of the project.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We conducted a public hearing on July 28th. This landmark nomination was nominated on May 26th of this year. The owner has been notified. We have, the last communication we have with the owner is that he wasn't sure if he wanted to proceed or not. But I haven't heard from him since the public hearing or prior to the public hearing. So I don't have a formal position from the ownership. The building meets our criteria. I won't go through the entire nomination today. I don't think that's necessary unless the commission has questions. We're also joined today by Heather Lazar, representing Councilmember Spencer. So we're here today to determine whether or not we want to proceed or not proceed with the designation. The next step would be to draft legislation for introduction at City Council.
Thank you for the recap. We'd like to hear from Councilman I'm sorry, who's here on behalf of Councilman?
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Heather Lazar, and I am the neighborhood advocate within the Ward 15 Council office. And we have worked with Landmarks as well as David Jerka, who I believe is on this call as well. And we just ask that you continue with the nomination and prepare the legislation so that we could proceed in designating this a landmark.
Thank you. So I guess the next is questions or comments from the commission. If not, would someone like to make a recommendation or a motion? Don, please remind me so that I'm saying this correctly. It's a motion to continue the nomination and prepare the legislation.
That's correct. That's correct.
I make it,
Is that Alan? I'm sorry, Mr. Dryer?
I think that was Giancarlo, but
Oh.
I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you for the motion and the second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Oh, go ahead. Mr. Edmund?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having seen this before and gotten the information, I certainly think this is worthy. My only question is, if the owner is uncertain about moving forward, do we move forward without the owner's full endorsement?
Madam Chair,
Great question.
it's ultimately up to the council member. We can designate a landmark over the owner's objections. We're not required to have consent as long as we've adequately noticed the meeting and had the public hearing. I think it's ultimately the decision of the council member whether or not she wants to proceed with the legislation. But our role here is just to determine if the building meets our criteria and is eligible, and that's really our role at this time.
Thank you.
Ms. Lazar, did you have a comment to that?
Thank you. I just wanted to add, in the photo that you can see on your screen right now, in the lower right-hand corner of the left-hand picture, there is a for sale sign. So I'm not quite sure if the owner is still trying to sell the property, but I just hope that can weigh into your decision.
Thank you, Ms. Lazar, for that comment. Any further discussion? Great points. Well, one question, Ms. Lazar, has the council woman approached the applicant or spoken to the owner?
We have not. I can circle back with Councilmember Spencer to see when she may have had any last contact, but I know personally I have not spoken with the owner.
I think it would be, we would advise that the councilwoman does, so that, when this the legislation comes in front of council, that we're aligned.
Thank you. I will do that.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this matter? All right. Yeah, I think we have reviewed this twice, and I would agree with what Mr. Edmund said. I personally feel that this is worthy of a nomination. So with the motion on the table and the second, Mr. Pettit, will you please call roll and announce the results?
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Kalikia,
yes,
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion to proceed with the designation passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. We will continue on with to our certificates of appropriateness. We'll start with our first applicants located at 1324 West Boulevard. We'd welcome the applicant to unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project. And since we
Good
did
morning.
see this recently, if I believe, correct? Yes, you can just recap probably what has changed or different from when we saw this 2 weeks ago.
Good morning, everyone. I don't have my wife's notes. She is unable to attend. She is out of town for work. So unfortunately, I probably won't be able to recap too much. All that I can say about it is we're asking to change 7 windows in our home from the original wood windows that are falling apart to a vinyl window. Is that okay? Is that enough, Julie, or do you need more than that?
Have you made any revisions since the last time we spoke 2 weeks ago?
So
I know
so
there's-
this is actually a full new presentation filled with a bunch of specs from the manufacturer. I talked to the manufacturer in depth about this, and this is basically a totally new presentation.
Then please proceed and go through the presentation.
Okay, so today I'd like to start by showing a brief timeline of the progress we've made at our home on 1324 West Boulevard. In August 2014, I bought the home by myself. As you can see from this photo, it needed a lot of love. The home and the property weren't maintained properly for years, and it was so bad that when I bought the home, I didn't know until 2015 that the Schweinfurth Bridge 54 bridge was even there. Next slide. In 2015, when I saw the stonework, I started working diligently to showcase it. I asked for help from every local and state rep that I could. No one really helped. No one offered any help. Next slide. In 2017, you can see serious gains were starting to happen. For the first time in decades, you could actually see the beautiful stonework on the bridge. Next slide. In September 18, I used more of my own money to plant plants and make it more curb appealing. Next slide. In 2021, after years of talking to Norfolk Southern to clean and maintain the property with lawyers, letters, phone calls, they finally helped clean up the property. But this fight has cost me thousands and thousands in materials and lawyer fees. Next slide. Which brings us to present day. Why do I bring this up? Because we care. We care more about the looks of this community than most, and I would argue that this property has been the most transformed property on West Boulevard in the 8 years that I've been here. With that said, today we're asking for a financial hardship exemption to put the Pella 250 series vinyl windows in our home. Next slide. We're proposing to change the exterior windows to showcase the original intent of the home's windows. Original windows now are either double hung or interior swing casements. No one makes an interior swing casement now. No one. And exterior swing casements will not function as there is a downspout restricting swing. It would not be able to open, creating a safety hazard in an emergency. We do not have a choice but to use all double hung windows. So Pella's proposal, which we agree with, is to change 6 of the remaining 7 windows to white double hungs with muntins on top sash only, and all of them so they match, creating a beautiful aesthetic from the street this house hasn't had in decades. To showcase the beautiful new windows, the Pella 250 series has a feature exclusive to this series window, a hidden screen. We believe that it's an important feature that we'll showcase at the end of this presentation. This slide is basically the quote from Pella. The next 2 slides are all they just show you the examples of what the windows would be. If you could go over to slide 10. Why the Pella 250 series? The Pella 250 series vinyl window is no ordinary vinyl window and has some amazing features at a cost that is more digestible than a wood aluminum clad window. These windows are 52% stronger than vinyl windows, which greatly reduces vinyl's tendency to warp while increasing the security of the window. They are 62% more energy efficient than single pane windows like we have currently and won Energy Star's most efficient window in 2022. All while having one of the strongest warranties in the business. Everyone knows Pella's name. They are truly great windows. Slide 13, if you could fast forward to. I included a full spec sheet so you can look over the specs of these windows, but I also made an easy breakdown of the important numbers that compared them to wood aluminum clad. As you can see, U-factor, solar heat gain coefficient, and sound transmission class are all very close, if not even. The wood aluminum clad has some ranges because the wood is not a manufactured product, so values can vary. Where the vinyl and aluminum clad windows are different is in the performance ratings. Performance ratings are set by the FGIA and use letters and numbers to rate windows. What do the R and CW mean? With the vinyl window, R25 to 50 means it's a residential grade window. With the wood aluminum clad window, it uses a CW designation for a commercial grade window. CW grade windows are commonly used in low and mid-rise buildings where higher wind load requirements, limits on deflection, and heavy use are expected. I will repeat this. Wood aluminum clad with the CW classification are not a residential grade window per the FGIA, and the data is clear. There is no major difference in performance between vinyl and wood aluminum clad. So what is the difference? Cost. Why? Because wood in windows is very expensive. Next slide. Well, what about life expectancy? The cost has to reflect longevity in the wood aluminum clad, correct? No, it doesn't. The Pella 250 series has a lifespan of 20 to 40 years, and the wood aluminum clad is about 30. I will now play you a short YouTube video of rotted aluminum clad windows after only 20 years. Next slide. So I don't know if this will come through, but if you click on that, that is actually a YouTube video of windows that are, I think they were 20 years old, that are completely destroyed on the inside and rotted.
I'm not sure if we're able to actually play the video in the presentation.
Okay.
I don't think we have the link.
Okay, it's actually just clicking on that, yep, if you click on that picture of the rotted aluminum clad windows, that should be a link to, it should automatically start.
I think he's saying the image, click right there.
This one?
I think the image right there, try clicking there. Nope, it's just a hand.
Yeah, I don't think we have that capability. I apologize.
Okay, and I apologize too, because I am not what I would call a PowerPoint guru. It did work at home, but I didn't have any way for you guys to test it. So if you could go to the next slide, I think. Actually, you could leave it here. So why do wood aluminum clad windows fail? Thermal expansion and contraction breaks the seal and separates the wood. Moisture gets trapped in and has no way out because of the cladding. Not only does it rot the wood, but it accelerates wood rot. New wood aluminum clad windows are made from pine, not hardwood. These are not 120-year-old hardwood pieces of lumber that have held up over the last 120 years like they used in the 1900s. These windows are typically made from 10 to 15-year-old pine. This value engineered measure drastically reduces life expectancy of these windows. There was recently a class action lawsuit against Pella that they settled for $26 million because these windows have design flaws and rot. So I ask, why is the city of Cleveland forcing homeowners to install a substandard window with design flaws in class action lawsuits? Is the city going to accept liability recommending a wood aluminum clad? Every window rep that I have spoke to does not recommend aluminum clad in this climate, as the temperatures are too extreme and we are replacing east-facing windows, so separation probability will be magnified. They also recommend using a white vinyl window, as white is the most reflective of the sun's damage and will hold up better to the sun than colored windows. In this slide, can you spot the difference between wood aluminum clad and vinyl? In this slide, at least one house has vinyl and at least one has a wood aluminum clad. I would ask of every member here today to point out the differences from the photos. From the street, I'd argue that there are no visible differences between the two. Next slide. A major point of debate in this community is muntins, interior full divided light. Why do we even have them? Muntins date back to the 1600s when muntins were used to support the weight of the window. I'm happy to say since 1600, we've grown. Technology has changed, and today muntins give us an important look, but that's all they are, a cosmetic look based on a 500-year-old problem. So in between glass or exterior. In between glass is both less maintenance, which will keep us aesthetic for a longer period, and more traditional. But don't take my word for it. Andersen Windows says it's more traditional look because there are no interruptions in the glass. I included a link below if you'd like to read further. Pella stopped putting exterior muntins on the 250 series window in 2022 because they are too cost prohibitive and people didn't want to deal with the difficult maintenance. Essentially, people ignore their windows and exterior muntins get filthy and look worn instead of looking nice. Again, with eastern-facing windows in this climate, it is suggested to use muntins that are protected by the argon of the window to stay true to form. Next slide. We'd love to showcase the original intent of the muntins and use a feature that is exclusive to the 250 series window. They have an option for screens to be hidden unless the window is open, so the muntins are never hidden by screens. This is an amazing feature that we should welcome to keep the historic features of this area. Our home now has muntins, sure, but you cannot see any of them from the street because of the storm windows. The Pella 250 series fixes this issue and has tested the screens to ensure that they last for at least 9,400 operations, which is equivalent to operating them every day for 25 years. Next slide. The cost of wood aluminum clad is more than double the 250 series because of the wood prices and the cost of labor to make them. Pella's own spec sheets show us that they are not superior in any measurable category except for price. While they do have a wood interior, which is historically accurate, to my knowledge, Landmarks has no control over the interior of the home. Neither vinyl nor aluminum are historically accurate, so both are exceptions. This all comes down to price. From the beginning of this presentation, I've demonstrated how much money and time we've put into this home. We've taken care of a property that doesn't even belong to us for the community to enjoy that's become a huge financial burden. Financially, I take care of a mother that's in the last year, she's been battling cancer, and a 40-year-old sister that's been unable to work from COVID-related side effects. She will never be the same. This has been a tremendous financial burden on me. I do not have $20,000 for windows. I do not have the ability to get a second mortgage. I do not have the cash to pay for an $1,800 wood window to be custom made. The Pella 250 series is the only option I might be able to afford, and I've shown that it's comparable substitution to wood aluminum clad. I'm asking for a financial hardship exemption, and if I do not get it, I will be forced to live with insulation filling the window for the foreseeable future. We need this exemption, and I can't stress that enough. My house was broke into in 2015. They stole $30,000 worth of items from my home, and now every day I'm forced to, not only am I forced to insulate my window to keep my energy costs down, but now I can barely sleep at night because I'm so worried about having an insecure storm window only. We originally emailed Carl in mid-June to start this process. It's been 8 weeks of research and struggling to pay $500 electric bills. I cannot take this anymore. I've had to devote time to this issue and away from my family, which is really what matters. Our financial and safety well-being are in your hands. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the new presentation and all the research that you did. That was very, very helpful. Thank you. Mr. Pettit, can you remind us the local design reviews comments on this previously?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this was reviewed by the Clifton West Boulevard Design Review Committee on July 13th. They voted to recommend denial of the certificate of appropriateness. The issue again was the front windows and the materials, and this has not gone back to the committee. This was tabled by the commission 2 weeks ago. That was their recommendation prior to the last meeting.
Thank you for that summary. We will, is the councilman, still, representative still here? No, it's like she has. exited.
I believe she left the meeting after the nomination.
Okay, thank you. Then we will open the floor up to the commission for questions and comments. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to commend the applicant for the level of research that he's done for this project too. It certainly has been compelling and convincing as far as I'm concerned. I understand the arguments, and at this point, I think that the windows that he's proposing would be appropriate. I do have one question in terms of the construction of the muttons. We know that muttons sometimes are simulated using tape on the inside of the insulated panes, and sometimes it's more of a architectural feature embedded within the glass. And I wondered how these muttons were constructed. If the applicant.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Inside the spec sheet or the quote for inside the spec sheet for these windows, there are two different options for the muttons. There is a flatter type, which is more reflective of what we have currently, or there is I'll call it a beveled type, which is not what we have currently. So we are replacing. We're going to use the flat type, which currently matches what we have to the best of our ability.
And do you know if that flat configuration is simulated using like tape so that it's really flat?
No. Yeah, no, it's not tape. I believe it's like I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately. I'm doing this off of a cell phone, but I want to say it's like 5/8 thick.
Okay.
They are a thick mutton. It is definitely not a tape.
All right, perfect.
Don, can you move forward? I think a few slides, and I think there was a profile of it. Nope, it's just the jam. Do one more.
I think it's that page that has the two profiles.
Material that answers my question. That's fine as far as I'm concerned.
Right, it's halfway in the right side of the page.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like a profiled mutton.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Edmond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would also like to thank the applicant for all the research and all the work that you've done over the years. Part of what the Landmarks Commission does, I think, is to uphold context and aesthetic standards. But I think part of it is also equity in making sure that our homeowners have an opportunity to thrive, and particularly those that are really doing their level best to do the right thing within the context of their resources. So I'm in support of the proposal, and I think that it's balancing that equity value with the aesthetic and contextual value. I think this is a good compromise for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edmond. I would echo that. Understanding your context more during this presentation personally has helped me be in support of your proposal based on your exception, the exemption, due to the hardship of you also taking care of the adjacent landmark property of the bridge. So your research is very worthy of and worthwhile for this commission, in my personal opinion. Giancarlo?
Thank you. I'm just curious, a couple of questions. One is like, you mentioned you're paying $500 a month on electric bills. Why is that? That seems to be so high.
When this window broke, there's nothing containing the cool air from the inside to go outside. So All we have is a storm window. There's already no insulation in between where the double hung windows are because of the way that the old ones are made with the weights. This has accelerated that. And in the last meeting, I asked to board the window. I had to, it's difficult to board the window. I would actually had to reframe the entire outside. I did some digging. It sounds like the city of Cleveland recommends or actually requires the board to be black. I had to insulate the window to keep some of that cool air inside the house.
Okay, I think, and it's my next question is actually for the commission. I mean, I think an exemption may be appropriate, but would that establish a precedence for the future that someone else would then refer back to this precedent and claim also a similar exemption? Or can we make a motion of a one-time approval of something like this?
I would recommend that as part of the motion, if someone feels appropriate to put forward that motion, that the exemption is due to the hardship of, my personal opinion based on the start of the presentation is due to also taking care of the neighboring property of the landmark bridge. So I think we need to state clearly why we feel this exemption is appropriate for this case, since we do look at things as a case by case matter.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Pettit, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I would agree with that. I think it's, you know, it is always on a case by case basis that we review projects. I think it's always better the more explicit we are in our motion to explain our reasoning, just to make it clear that that we're making an exception here and the reasons for making that exception.
Mr. Rogers, do you have anything to add to that?
Madam Chair, that's what you indicated and what Mr. Pettit just confirmed is what I would agree with, and there isn't anything to add to that. There isn't any rule of the commission or express language in chapter 161 that controls the Landmarks Commission's decisions, but indicating in a motion as much detail as to the rationale is certainly better than having less information.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but my raised hand function is not working.
It is. I can actually see it.
Oh, you can? I can't.
Yes.
That's funny.
It's working.
Okay. All right.
It's there.
All right. I can't see it, but I'm sorry about that.
Did you have a question or would you like to make the motion, Ms. Anderson?
No, I don't want to make a motion. I have a question. There are 2 casement windows with like a very simple leaded glass dividers. I was wondering if it would be possible for the owner to retain those windows in the event that some future owner may want to restore them. Is that a realistic request?
I mean, if that's what you're requesting, I can keep them. I'm not sure what you want me to do with them, but sure, we can keep them.
Yeah, just put them in storage, so they're dry and they're safe in the event that somebody at some point may want to work with them in the future.
Sure.
Thank you for being open to that requirement. Other questions or would someone like to put forward a motion?
Giancarlo, your hand is still raised. Do you have a
Oh,
question?
okay. Well, I'd like to make the motion that we accept this exemption as a one-time basis. And then however we can clearly state that, Donald, maybe you could help, then I would make such a motion.
Don, would you like to make a recommendation or would you like me to?
I can take a stab at it. I would recommend approval, or the motion should be to approve the windows as presented, based on the revised presentation, the new information, from the applicant, expressing a financial hardship and, I'm not doing this very well. Uh, Basically, we are making an exception due to the hardship
Right.
and that, that, that exception is based on the circumstances of the owner and the financial considerations of the presentation.
Perhaps we can add that the two stained glass windows will be conserved for future.
Yes.
All right, so we have, the motion is to approve as presented, and this exception is being put forward due to the hardship with the condition of retaining the two leaded glass windows.
Yes.
John King, is that correct? So that's your motion with
Yes, it is.
those conditions? All right, do we have a second?
This is Bob Strickland. I'll second that motion.
All right, thank you, Mr. Strickland. Do we have any further discussion required? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Clicchia,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland, Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trot.
Yes.
The motion to approve passes unanimously.
Excellent. Well, we'd like to thank the applicant again for all of your research and, explaining the context to us in more details today. And we look forward to seeing your project, move forward here in the near future.
Thank you all.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next applicant located at 1220 Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, Phase 1 construction at the Pakistani Garden.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to remind the commission that we reviewed this conceptually on June 23rd. We reviewed the master plan for the garden and the concept, and they're back today requesting approval for their Phase 1 construction.
Perfect. Thank you for that reminder. Before the applicant starts, just one housekeeping, Mr. Clicchia and Ms. Anderson, do you mind turning off or clicking your hand icon off?
Thanks again. I couldn't see it.
It's okay. I don't want to keep calling on you unless you wanted to ask questions.
Is it off? Because I can't tell.
Yes, it's off. Thank you.
I just lowered them. You're good.
Okay. Okay, perfect. I'd like to welcome the applicant. Please unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Good morning. This is Tom Zarfas, landscape architect at Benke Landscape Architecture. We're here to talk about our Phase 1 construction for the Pakistani Garden. And Don, you have our presentation. Can you, okay. The location, as we showed you, we were before you about a month ago, we're on MLK. We're across from the Irish Garden, next to the Lebanese Garden, just before you get to the Superior Avenue Bridge headed south. Next slide. That's just a quick summary of what we presented last time. Phase 1, which is what we're looking at beginning here shortly. And I'll explain that further if we just go to the next slide, Don. This is our site, and I want to call your attention to a couple things here. One is the vegetation you see in the background is along the edge of Doan Brook. We're disturbing very little of that. You'll see on the drawings we have to clear a little bit of that edge out in one spot. On the left side of the picture, you see a pedestrian crosswalk sign. That crosswalk lines up with the entrance to our garden, which this is a bit of serendipity that it worked out that way. You see a pole right next to that crosswalk sign. That's one of the new LED streetlights that was put in, I think that's 3 years ago now by the city. And then as you enter the garden, you'll see a pedestrian scale light, which is also right at our garden entry. Next slide. That's the master plan that you approved a month ago. And what we're looking at doing today is the central plaza and the area to the left of it, which is a walk over to a small amphitheater. And the excavated material that comes out of the area where we do the plaza is going to be used to build a mound there. So we have a sort of a seating space that extends even beyond some concrete stairs. That central plaza, the planting area in the center of it, is eventually the pedestal for a replica of the Minar of Pakistan, which we showed you the last time. We're not prepared to do that at this time, but hopefully that will come in the future. Next slide. That's just a quick look at the area of the garden. There's relatively little we have to do in the way of site preparation. As I noted, we're not taking out a lot of vegetation. Whoops, one more. Okay, next slide. That's our phase 1 program, the central plaza and the area that goes to the left or the south to the small amphitheater. The future site for the Minar will, in the short term, is going to be a planting bed. The plaza itself is concrete, two types of concrete. The star you see, which is again, that's also a replica of the setting for the Minar in Pakistan. That's going to be a colored stamped concrete. The remaining concrete will not be colored. It'll be scored on a 2-foot pattern and etched to expose a little bit of aggregate to give it an interesting surface. You can see though there are some benches included around the plaza, and there's some interpretive materials which I'll show you those details in a second. Next slide. The grading plan is not something that is much of a deal here. This is a flat site. It all slopes very slightly toward the brook. We're not putting in enough pavement that we're going to have a runoff issue. We have enough of a buffer between ourselves and the brook that it's not an issue. I do want to call your attention to it at our entry. There'll be a garden sign and a flagpole. Those are provided by the Holden Parks Trust. Next slide. Planting plan. Trying to keep this reasonably simple in that we don't want to create a big maintenance issue. And as you probably know, the city's responsibility for maintenance is mowing the grass. That's it. The rest of the maintenance is the responsibility of the garden and their committee and their folks that assist with the work. So we're trying to keep this attractive but reasonably simple. And there unfortunately have been some problems with plant stealing in the cultural gardens that we're going to have to try to deal with. So it's simple material, attractive material. Next slide. Construction details. The lower left-hand corner is that future pedestal for the Minar. In the interim, that'll be a seat wall with some planting behind it, and then eventually we'll put a concrete cap on that and we install the Minar. Next slide. That's a sample of the type of pavement we want to use for the star. we're still looking at colors, but it'll probably be something in that range. Next, please. The same artists we're using for the Menard, we're going to use for our interpretive materials. The Menard will be stainless steel. These are stainless steel with some, as you can see, we're looking at some artwork on it that reflective of the culture of Pakistan. There'll be 4 of these. Each will have a separate topic. They will also have a QR code. Try to, use some of the technology that almost everybody has available to them these days, and not try to write long dissertations on interpretive material. Keep it simple, give people the general idea, and people that are interested can easily find a lot more information. Next slide. This is the bench we're planning on using. As you've already realized, we have a sort of a stainless steel approach here with the interpretive materials in the Menard. This is not stainless steel, but it's still bright metal, and we think it fits quite well with the palette of the garden. And I think that's probably my last slide. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you folks have.
Thank you for the presentation. We appreciate it. Feedback from the local committee, which is the Garden Commission, correct, Don?
Yeah.
Yes, Madam Chair. This was approved by the Cleveland Cultural Gardens Federation, and Lori Ashik, the executive director, is at the meeting today if she'd like to add anything to that.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yes, we did approve the plan, and looking forward to phase 1. And my understanding is, the garden will be coming back to the Design and Preservation Committee and the Federation Board for subsequent phases. So we are in full support of this first phase.
Excellent. Thank you for that summary. I would just, commend the applicants for being able to bring this forward and into fruition so quickly. It's going to be a wonderful addition. Mr. Admin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think this is great, and I'm in support of it. I have a couple of maybe minor questions. If you stay on this slide, the 5-pointed star, the geometry of that star, as shown here, is not really radially symmetrical. So it's not a regular 5-pointed star. The angle at the bottom is a little more than the angle at the top. I don't know if this is the final geometry or if there's a reason. It seems like it should be a regular 5-pointed star, but
Carter,
sounds like you've already wrestled with this.
we cheated, Carter. I don't think anyone, but a few of us will know this. We kind of, you can sort of see where the points go, line up on the benches and on the interpretive materials. And we kind of thought, yeah, we could get away with that. But your sharp eyes caught it. I don't know that anybody else will.
Okay. I mean, it's certainly, I know that a lot of times we have to take some geometric license and make some concessions for the reality of our sites and so forth. So it sounds like you've already wrestled with that. I had another question, and this, you talked about the plantings, and I know you need to have bulletproof plantings, and obviously recognizing that Pakistan's climate is very different from ours here. Are there any plantings that are, evocative of Pakistan in any way that would thrive here? I was looking at, I don't know if a Himalayan cedar would be an option, or if that's even available. Do you have any thoughts about plantings that might the Pakistani landscape in any way?
Yeah, we've worked very closely with a committee of Pakistani folks, and we didn't come up with anything that was either wasn't available or really just wasn't appropriate. And we can look at that further, but we just didn't find anything that made any sense.
I understand. I thought that might be a long shot anyway. But I think, you know, the plan you have here, I'm very supportive. I think when we come to phase two and look at that tower has the possibility to be a really great landmark there. It's all going to come down to the execution, how that's built, how it's finished, how it looks. Once we get there, obviously that's phase two, but you know, if that's well executed, it can be a really, really nice landmark. So that's all my comments.
I appreciate your comments, and the committee's been working really hard on that. And I think the person they have working on it is very good, very competent. And I think you'll be pleased when you see it. And I hope it's not too far down the road.
Madam Chair, you're muted. I believe Mr. Clicchia has his hand raised.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I was saying, Mr. Clicchia.
Thank you. I have several questions and requests for additional information, but one of the things that always intrigues me about the cultural garden is that they do reflect the cultures and the people that they represent. Pakistan, for example, is world known for some beautiful marbles and granites, and I would think that some materials, I mean, we always go to these cast concrete, we try to make them interesting by colors or whatever, but it's basically cast concrete. And then we have some of the most, along the Pakistani-Iranian border, we have some of the most incredible quarries of the world. They use some local materials, and then we mention trees. Again, Pakistan, especially the higher regions, has a similar climatic condition as here. There's all kinds of, including a whole family of mulberries that only live in Pakistan. So some effort should be taken to reflect the culture of the country by the materials we use, I think, very strongly. Also, you mentioned maintenance. And everybody wants maintenance free, but to me, maintaining a beautiful cultural garden should be part of the activities of the community. We can't just leave it to the city of Cleveland to mow the lawn and forget it. Nor should we expect a cultural garden to be built and then forgotten, except maybe from some special uses the community may have for it once or twice a year. I'd like to hear your comments on that, please.
I'll start with the maintenance. Yeah, the cultural gardens, they are required to do all the maintenance other than, as I said, other than mowing the grass. And I've been doing work in Rockefeller Park now for 40 years, and I've seen a lot of new gardens and old gardens, and I kind of have a pretty good feel for how those things work or don't. And I think I just feel it's important to make sure you don't put a burden that's may not be acceptable to future generations. It's not just the current committee you have to think about. It's who down the road, makes those decisions and decides what they're willing to do and what they're not. So my tendency is to try to keep these things reasonably simple. And then we also have some budget issues too. You can always add planting to a garden, but that's been our strategy. And in terms of indigenous materials, yeah, there's some real budget issues there. And the other way I think we can deal with that is we're going, as I noted, we're going to do a lot with our interpretive materials, so we can show people some of these things that we really can't afford to bring to the garden. I mean, we just don't have a budget to start using marble or, some really.
Yeah, but I always question that too, this budget issue. I mean, how much does cast concrete cost? Do we know the exact cost of cast concrete, and do we know the exact cost of some Pakistani marble?
Well, I know the exact cost of concrete, and I know it's a lot less than Pakistani marble.
Are you sure? Are you sure of that?
Yes, I'm sure of that.
Sorry?
I'm sure of that.
Okay, and then what about some trees, some distinctive elements that makes this a recognizable Pakistani garden?
Well, I don't think any Americans would recognize a Pakistani tree, to be honest. I mean, I just don't. And mulberries are not something I'd want to incorporate. Again, I think we have to use our interpretive material and creatively and instructionally, you know, and tell people about the country that way. We just did a Colombian garden master plan, and we had some of the same issues there. And you just have to recognize that it's just some things you can't transport and have them be meaningful to people. And that plant material also is just not available.
But it is. I have it here in my garden, and I purchased it from nurseries in Oregon, California, and Washington. I can suggest something.
What is it you have? Tell me.
I have a Pakistani mulberry tree, which is one of the most beautiful plants in the world.
Okay, well, we can look into that. I mean, we could always change a tree or two. That's not a problem.
But to me, it's like we need to distinguish them from other. You know, you mentioned the Colombian garden. You know, I have the same issues with that. I mean, I like to see Colombian something that identifies these beautiful gardens for the culture that they represent and come from. That when your Pakistani have events in this garden, they see it as an extension of their home and their environment and what they left behind and what they're creating for America, for the people in Cleveland. That's especially since this community now of cultural gardens in Cleveland has become world famous.
Well, it's good point. And all I can say is I've worked very closely with a pretty large committee from the Pakistani local population, and this is where we are. And this, I quite honestly, it's the first I heard about the Pakistani mulberry, but I'll look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That's all for me now. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Plickett. Ms. Asher?
Yes, thank you. Giancarlo, I think your points are well taken, if I can speak for the gardens as a whole. I mean, there are specific circumstances for this particular garden, and there's always budget constraints, but I do agree with you. These are gardens, and these are cultural gardens, and the Cultural Gardens Federation as a whole does encourage indigenous planting. So your points are well taken. And even though someone going by the garden might not recognize and know the difference, when we do tours in our promotional material for the gardens as a whole, we do point out the indigenous plants. So we do try to make a point of that. And again, I don't want to get into the specifics of this garden because there are particular circumstances here, but I agree with you. And generally the Federation and our Design and Preservation Committee does encourage the use of indigenous plants.
I think they're beautiful. I mean, I congratulate you for the efforts, and they're magnificent. I think my comments reflect that, you know.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, thank you.
Just a quick design question, Mr. Zarkos. Here in the colored drawing, it looks like your benches are on the same concrete material that the center circle is in, where the more detailed drawings, it steps around the benches and the interpretive materials. Which is the direction you're going?
The construction drawing, if you go down a couple more there, right. That's the direction we're going there.
Okay, my only comment would be is that it might make sense, in my opinion, to complete the right-hand side page right of the outer circle, so that you don't have the little bite in that area, since it you're not fully aware of when phase 2 would go forward. So I think that might look a little bit more complete, in my opinion. Or change the edging around the two right extensions of the concrete around the bench and interpretive sign, so that it feels similar to your color drawing. And then I would ask for some consideration that, obviously this takes a lot of fundraising But, to consider in your phase two, remind me of the bench material. I'm sorry, I missed that when you were presented earlier.
The bench material, go to the last picture is the bench.
Oops, and I'm zoomed in, that's probably why.
There, that's the bench.
Could this be an opportunity to incorporate some of that indigenous marble in a very, delicate way? It would probably obviously need to go backless bench, but providing something within the space that, if somebody saw the marble, they would connect to, based on, it being something that is from that region.
Even a stone bench.
Right, a stone bench, made out of marble so that people could connect to that.
We could take a look at that. I was trying to do something a little more comfortable than a stone or a concrete bench. But yeah, we could take a look.
People have been sitting on stone benches for a million years. Yeah,
Oh, I know they have. Yeah. We
So
can.
I would recommend just considering that for your phase two so that, it does provide that connection to the location.
If we could get marble or indigenous stone within our budget, that little amphitheater, which is concrete steps, it would be quite nice to have that be a.
I can recommend a few of them, and you can get one of your Pakistani associates to donate it. It could be an extension of the budget instead of a part of the budget.
I will raise that point.
Hey, Giancarlo, maybe you can have an offline with Ms. Sarkos of maybe some recommendations of who we should talk to, since you do have some amazing connections.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Ms.
Okay.
Anderson, do you have additional questions or comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, kind of stepping off of what we're just talking about here. I was wondering if it's possible for somebody in the community who wants to step up to put the additional funds in place so that they can upgrade some of these materials and incorporate some stone. If it's possible for them to get, a tax write-off, first of all, and possibly have maybe their name, this has been sponsored by a generous donation from, somebody's name or somebody's company. I don't know if that's allowed in the cultural garden, but, it might be a nice perk or an incentive for somebody to make that kind of donation. So that's my
If I might respond to that, I've sat in on quite a few meetings now with the Pakistani committee, and they're very aggressively fundraising, and they're using every idea they can, and they have discussed what you've brought up. So yeah, they're looking at it.
Yeah, it's a very strong, proud community in Cleveland, so I think, and you're taking your time in doing this project. It's not, the Manar is a year or so down the road. So there's time to do things correctly, to do things that we can all be happy with and proud, again, these are great additions to the community, not only to the Pakistani community, but to the entire city. And for us to know more and enjoy the culture of Pakistan is part of the American tradition, I think, part of.
And the other thing I would add to the whole fundraising thing, the Manar is a big ticket item.
Of course.
And so they're looking at the whole picture here, and right now they're pretty focused on that. So it gets into big bucks pretty fast. So we're doing the best we can, but I think your suggestions are worth exploring, and we will.
I appreciate that, because I do realize this is an expensive endeavor, and this is a very thoughtful, very, very nice addition to the cultural garden landscapes down there. So yeah, I think you're in the right direction, and I look forward to seeing this. But if it could be enhanced by some natural stone, that would be a wonderful thing. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments, or would someone like to put forward a motion?
I'd like to put forward a motion. Again, with some intricate extensions to it. I think move forward with approval and without actually demanding or requesting that these things be done, to consider all the stuff that was said by us as a commission regarding stone, regarding reflecting the culture of the country and the trees. And I'm not sure how to put that into the conditions. Donald, maybe you can help again. But I think without seeming unnecessarily harsh, but to rely on our sense of honor and pride to consider all these conditions that we mentioned.
So if you'd like some assistance, what I heard your motion to be is you recommend approval as presented with a consideration to upgrade the materials for the benches or steps and the landscape to be aligned with the culture itself versus local.
Yes, that's good. Thank you.
Either in the current phase or phase 2.
Yes. And the use of materials, yeah.
Madam Chair, would you like to add a recommendation about your point regarding the right side of the star area?
Yes, recommendation to study the right side of the star area of the outer circle to have it appear complete in phase 1 until you get to phase 2. That is the motion. Would someone like to make a to second the motion?
This is Carter. I'll second it.
Thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. Further discussion? Nothing being heard. Mr. Pettit, please call the roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Kalikia,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
I want to thank you all for your input. Appreciate it. And Don, do we need any other approvals before applying for a construction permit?
I don't believe so. I know the city has and I don't know if it's Public Works, they have some kind of a licensing procedure. But I think you can just proceed to apply for permits at any time.
All right. Thank you all again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Edmund? Would you like to
I
amend?
need to step away for a short meeting. I should be back about 11 o'clock.
Excellent. Thank you for letting us
Thank
know.
you.
We'll move on to our next applicant. Located at 3575 West 130th Street renovation. I'd like to welcome the applicant. Please open your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Hello, everyone. This is Seth Duke with Bialowski Cleveland. I'm the project architect for the Hawthorne School renovation. I have a number of my colleagues with me today in case there are any questions that might elude my grasp, including my team at Bialowski that includes David Cron, Larissa Burley, and Jai McWilson. I believe Josh Rosen and Naomi Sable, representing Sustainable Community Associates, is on the call. And we also have Michael Fleener from HP Group.
And a little housekeeping, just let Don know when you'd like to advance the slide.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Julie. Don, if you could go to our first slide. Just as a brief recap, I'll try and go through the basics of our presentation from last time. Obviously, it's a historic building and we're taking a very light touch, so not much has changed from the last time we presented. We're really trying to provide additional clarity and details on some of the areas where we are intervening with the site. Just as a brief introduction, this was a school owned by the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, and we have received historic tax credits for this project and have our Part 2 application approved both by the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service. So we can go to the aerial site plan next. In case you're unfamiliar with the location, this is just south of Lorraine Avenue at West 130th Street. It's a large lot just a couple blocks east of Jefferson Park, which you can see on the left side of the aerial. Most of the site is asphalt currently, and you'll see in our site plans that we're tearing a lot of that out and bringing a lot more green space back to the site. Just a couple of quick notes on the existing conditions. The 2 trailers at the rear have actually already been removed from the site, I believe, by the school district. And one of the existing trees on the front lawn, the southernmost, has actually been cut down already, also, I believe, by the school district, which we found out last week. We want to go to the next slide. Just a little bit of site context. So from Lorraine Avenue, it's just a couple blocks away, very car oriented, coming up West 130th to Lorraine, mostly commercial, a lot of parking. And then on the next slide, you can see that Jefferson Park, as I mentioned, is just a few blocks away. So while we will have some outdoor space on site that's open to the public and available for residents, really there's this larger park for more active uses such as tennis or playgrounds, etc., compared to what we have on our site. Next slide. And then this is just the front of elevation, existing conditions. I did want to point out that we did take a recent site walk with our historic consultant and a restoration contractor to evaluate all the masonry and stone. It's in remarkably good shape. So we'll have very minimal repairs to do. There are some critical areas, but overall just some tuck pointing and cleaning for the most part. One thing to point out that you'll see in the drawings is the sort of gray box on the left. That is an existing entrance that we'll be reusing as our new accessible point of entry. And then the one real change we're making to the fenestration is the very small windows at the bottom level in the center. We are widening to match the proportions of the windows above. We'll be retaining the stone headers and working through that with our structural engineer. And the National Park Service is aware that we are changing those openings. I believe our site plan is next. As I mentioned, we're tearing out a lot of the existing asphalt. The north area will be regreening and leaving that as open space for a potential future development later down the road. We're providing a new access drive for automobile and pedestrian traffic into the site, including a new curb cut on West 130th. That's kind of critical from the nearby residents. We really want to divide up any car traffic coming in and out so that it's not all being dumped on the residential side on West 129th, where the existing curb cut is. But we do want to design that drive in such a way that people aren't using it as a cut through. So we'll have some crosswalks and some speed bumps strategically placed so that it's really mostly just people coming to and from this building. The lots on West 129th are for residents and are secure behind fencing. And then we have a small drop-off area, and we'll have some additional accessible parking near the drop-off area for visitors and to meet accessibility code. Excuse me. That number 2, I believe I pointed out last time, and we'll see in later slides as well, is our new accessible entrance, that gray box I pointed out in the photo. And then where the number 3s are, those are all the stairwells which provide access to all floors of the building. One thing that's not shown in the site plan that I would point out that we had a comment from the local design review and we're working on revising is creating that where number 6 is, the utility area, making that a little bit smaller and providing a pedestrian connection between both parking lots so that regardless of which parking lot you're in as a resident, you have direct access to the building without having to leave the secure lot and go to another entrance. So you'll be able to use that east entrance stairwell at the southeast parking lot, even if you're parked at the northeast parking lot. And then if we go to the next slide, we just have a little bit more detail on landscaping. This is our preliminary plan from our landscape architect. That's sort of the base approach, adding plenty of shade trees in that front lawn so that people can use it as sort of just a relaxing lawn area for picnics, frisbee, just to enjoy that space. And then more dense shrubbery in front of the building and between the parking and the building to provide a little bit of privacy and a buffer while still allowing light and air into the lower level windows in particular. We did have some comments from design review from the city's landscape architect about species, but our landscape architect is aware of those and believes that the specific species of plants are adequate and appropriate for the site. And you can see those species, I believe, on the next slide, just as a quick overview. So we have a number of trees, both on the front lawn and at the entrances, including some new tree lawn trees, and then some denser shrubbery around the building to provide that privacy screening. And then I believe if we go to the next slide, we added these next couple slides just to provide a little bit more clarity on the entrances to the building and the circulation. It is a little bit of an odd building from an elevation and grading standpoint. The building doesn't really have a direct entrance to any of the floors aside from the new one that we're creating on West 130th. All of the stairwells, you come in at a midpoint between the lower level and the first floor, so you have to go up or down regardless of where you are. And as you can see, it being a school building, it had a number of entrances well beyond what is adequate and necessary for the new residential use of the building. So we're maintaining all of the entrances of the stairwells. We are maintaining and improving the entrance off West 130th for accessibility. And then we're maintaining a rear entrance from the parking and utility area that goes directly into the utility space in the basement. There are 3 entrances that we are no longer using. One, in fact, has already been closed up. Many years ago, it's been filled in with a concrete floor. That's the one on the east elevation at the south end of the building. Then there's another entrance from that southeast parking lot to the east wing that went directly into the auditorium on the first floor. And that is now one large unit. So we're recouping that space to be able to provide a second bathroom for a large 3-bedroom unit. And then on the front on West 130th, there was what was the West 130th entrance to the original 1917 school, which was just that southern third of the building. As a functional entrance, it really doesn't serve much of a purpose with the expansion of the school because it only comes in at grade, goes up to the first floor, and then provides access to 2 or 3 units as a convenient entrance for the most part. If you're in this building, you have to go up or down the stairs to another level. So you're likely going to want to come in at any of the stairwells or via the accessible entrance to check your mail, get your packages, bring in your bike. So if you were on the second floor or in the basement and you tried to use that entrance, you'd still end up walking through the building to another stairwell. So we're really trying to just control access in the most convenient way possible for circulation, as well as using as much of the interior as possible. And I think if we go to the next image, it's more of just what I talked about, but it just shows a little bit of that split level access. So you can come in any of the stairwells to get to any of the floors, including if you have the penthouse unit, you'll see in the floor plans, you can come in off that rear stairwell. If you are a visitor to the site, we're really directing you via the landscaping and sidewalks to that new accessible entrance that'll have a canopy and landscaping, and through color of the fenestration, which we'll see in some of the illustrated views, that is the primary entrance on West 130th. And then automobile traffic will have access to those 2 secure lots, either via Lynette on the south or the new drive on the north side of the building. And I think we just have our floor plans. Won't linger on these too much. I believe we covered them in some detail last time, but as just a general approach to the building, we're preserving many of the historic finishes on the interior. So hardwood floors in the classrooms, tile, corridors, plaster ceilings, plaster walls in most cases. Chalkboards on the walls are being maintained. In most cases, we're leaving one completely exposed, and in other cases, due to plumbing and electrical, we'll be furring over them, but they will still be there in case a future owner wants to bring them back. On the basement, we have our accessible entrance, as I mentioned, and then some utility space in the central area. Going up to the first floor, which is the next slide, is that auditorium that I mentioned that is a large space, has a stage area that will have the kitchen for the unit, and then directly adjacent is that bathroom that I mentioned, which is why we're closing off access to that door. But we'll still have the 3 main stairwell entrances for direct access to the first floor. And then on the second floor, which is the next slide, there's a gymnasium directly above the auditorium. That will be one large open unit. We'll be refinishing the floors, repainting the basketball lines, leaving a couple basketball hoops up. We're very much trying to take a light touch both to the interior and exterior of this building and still maintain the feeling that you're in a school, even as we change the use to residential. And then I believe we have our elevations next. I'll go through, penthouse. My apologies. So we do have a penthouse unit. It's direct access via the east stair. That'll be a small 2-bedroom unit. We're rebuilding the windows, fixing the masonry sills. There are a couple mechanical louvers on the rear that will be changing to window openings to provide some additional light. And then there'll be a private deck with some combination of planters and railings to prevent access to the rest of the roof from that patio. And then on the elevations, I can run through these relatively quickly so that we can go to the rendered elevations. But if we go to the next image, as I mentioned, masonry and stone's in great shape. We have a little bit of repairs at the entrances where the stone has been weathered and damaged over the years. So we'll be patching those in, doing some Dutchman repairs for some bigger openings before we put in the new entrances. But we are restoring the windows based on the historic drawings and existing conditions that we have on site, and bringing back the transoms above the entrances to match the historic configurations. If we go through, I believe the next is the south elevation. You can see it's very similar. You can see that door that leads directly to the auditorium on the right. That'll be behind the secured parking. So even though we're fixing it shut, it's also not something that's going to be visible to the public right away necessarily. It'll be in that secured parking area. And if we continue around the building, on the rear, we have those light wells that'll have some guards around them for fall protection. We're likely rebuilding most of those based on the conditions, but we'll be able to reuse the stone caps for those light wells, as those have maintained their condition very well. And then that door in the rear that goes to the utility area, and then, thanks, Don. And then, yeah, the front elevation on the next slide, there we go. You can see the accessible entrance on the left. We have a blow up of that in just a couple slides. The former entrance that we're basically treating as a large window on the right, the doors will be opaque. There'll be a painted drywall partition behind, and then the transom will remain open to provide additional natural light to the unit beyond. Due to the floor levels and the split level nature of that transom will be up high, so you won't really see into the unit. It's going to be, up near the ceiling, so it'll provide light but still provide privacy. And then there are those windows at the center that we're widening for the basement units. the next slide, I believe we have these sort of rendered so you can kind of get an idea of what we're doing. So there'll be guardrails in front of the light wells. There'll be shrubs that provide some additional privacy in front of those. The windows, we're looking at a color to really lean into the existing stone on the building, which I believe we have a swatch later. We're looking at physical samples now to really get that color dialed in. The operable entrances, so the ones that you can actually go in, so our accessible entrance and the doors to the stairwell will be a bronze color, with the transoms above being a bronze color that really provide a visual indication that this is the way in and out of the building. And it works out that there are one of those on each facade, so there aren't necessarily two competing entrances. It's very clear which one is where you're going in, whereas the door we're fixing shut on the right will be the same color as all the windows. It's just sort of a subliminal visual cue that these are windows, these are doors, to help guide people to get in and out of the building. And then I believe we just have an enlarged blow up of both of those entrances next, just to show that. So there'll be a canopy above the new accessible entrance with an integral light. So you won't actually see the fixture, but we'll have some lighting in addition to the site lighting, which will be bollards along the path and poles at the parking lot. And then we'll have landscaping as well that really guides you to that entrance, whereas the other door will continue the landscaping in front of the stone steps. And then, as I mentioned, we're keeping the colors consistent with the windows. And then I think, yes, you just have rendered elevations of the other facades, similar to the front. So bronze color for the active entrances, and then matching the window color where we have that door that formerly went into the auditorium. And then around to the other side, or just an enlargement, excuse me, of those entrances similar to before. And then I believe it continues on to just a little bit more detail. So we're looking at Traco, which is owned by Conair for the windows. So there'll be aluminum windows, typically used for a lot of historic tax credit projects. And we're looking at sandstone, or as I mentioned, we've actually started looking at some physical aluminum chips to get a better match, but a very light buff color to correspond to the existing stone on the building, whereas the entrances will be a darker bronze color. And then we do have the historic drawings, very detailed for the later addition to the building, the 1927 portion. So we have a good idea of overall dimensions, placement within the wall, so we can really make sure we match the proportions correctly to the historic building. Then the next image just shows a quick section. I believe we showed this last time, just detailing how you have that sort of half below grade level with the light wells, and then you'll have your guardrail and landscaping. So you still get plenty of light. You'll still get a bit of a view outside, but people who are out either in the parking lot or on the front lawn won't directly be able to see into your unit. And it actually kind of works out well because then the first floor is elevated a bit above grade as well. So they still have plenty of privacy while still getting plenty of light in to their units. And then next up, I think this was a question that came up last time. You know, what are we doing for those railings at the guardrails? So this is a 42-inch, fence railing that would match correspondingly with our 6-foot-tall secure fence at the parking perimeter and utility area. So it'd be pretty much the exact same railing, exact same fencing, and then we just drop it down to that guardrail level so that it would be consistent all the way around the building. And then we'd have our landscaping in front. This is actually just a picture up the road from our office of essentially the same approach where we have fence and then landscaping in front of the secure area. And then I believe the next slide, this is, I believe, what we showed last time. So we're keeping things simple. It was a school building and trying to really lean into that. So black fencing where it goes to the trash area. It'll have a semi-opaque screen that we will further provide screening to via the landscaping as it comes in. Trash and recycling cans in the public areas. So at the entrance off of the drive aisle, as well as along the sidewalks leading to the accessible entry. So as people use that outdoor space, they can throw their trash and recycling away. Bike racks, very simple hoop black bike racks for outdoor bike parking, and then residents will have indoor bike parking in the building. Some very simple black, school playground, school park-esque benches. And then site lighting we're still working through, but it'll still be a very simple black light poles and then light bollards along the pathways. And then I believe next is just a final rendering. So you can see new trees on the front lawn, new landscaping in front of the building, that large open quad, or I guess triangle, in the southern portion along West 130th, and then the restored entrances and new landscaping around the building. So I'm happy to go back to any slides or answer any questions. And if I don't know the answer, I'm sure my colleagues would be happy to fill in as well.
Thank you for the very thorough presentation. We'll start with a feedback from the local design review committee. Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was reviewed by the Far West Design Review Committee on August 3rd. It was approved with one condition, that the applicants consider consistency in color and the brick window palette.
Can you explain that consistency in the brick window palette?
I wasn't at the meeting, so I'm not sure what they were getting at.
Yeah, so
maybe you can address that.
Yeah, I could speak to that. So the main thing that was brought up by one of the members of the design review committee was whether the differing colors for the entrances versus the windows was appropriate, or whether it would be better to do just a single color palette for the entire building. I think we've, in our presentation today, stuck with the two color system. It's similar to what we've done on a number of other historic projects. And given the fact that there's only one entrance on each elevation, we felt having that different color really helped signify the circulation pattern for the building.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. That's helpful. We will now open the floor to the commission for questions and comments. I will begin while I wait for others to raise their hand. I think this is a very light intervention, thoughtful restoration. I think you tried to maintain the character of the building as much as you can, which I do appreciate greatly, and really strengthen the design through this. My only comment was related to the windows above the doors, similar probably to the local committee, that I understand your rationale for the doors themselves to indicate the entrances. But my only question is, should the windows also be that? In looking at the colored elevations or renderings, I should say, it did make me second guess that one initially. I think it could go either way on this, but I guess my tendency would be to keep the and just have the doors be a different color. But I'm not opposed to what you currently have presented also. And then I'm in support of the project. Ms. Anderson, questions or comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I fully support this project too. It's going to be wonderful to see some new life breathed into this lovely school. Couple of questions. You are eliminating the existing wrought iron fence. I think there's a wrought iron fence around the perimeter of the property.
Yes, that's correct. It's not in great shape. It's very low, and I think we want to try and maintain a feeling of openness to the public, that they can easily come in and out of that landscaped area in the front.
Okay, and the fencing that you have, is it like an aluminum, the black aluminum fence?
Yeah, it would be a black aluminum fence. So in profile and appearance, it would be more similar to, a decorative iron fence, but it would be an aluminum material.
Okay, and on the east side of the building, facing that parking lot, you're going to have some plantings there so that they screen the windows for the units on the lower level there.
Yes, on both sides of the building. So both
Okay.
on the west 130th side as well as between the parking and the building.
And I just wanted to, I guess, make sure that the plantings along that parking lot area are like an evergreen that's dense enough so that in the winter, there won't be like headlights shining into people's units.
Right. And I believe, Don, if you go to the next slide that shows the species, it's that TX Hicks U that is going to be the primary screening in front of those areas.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Those were my questions, and I fully.
Thank you. Oopsie. Director Wong?
Good morning, everyone. First of all, knowing the work that SCA and Bialowski do, their work is always excellent and thoughtful. So I'm very supportive of the effort. And just on behalf of the city, it's really wonderful to see a school site that has gone through our city RFP process be restored and to be reused, as I know school sites are often very difficult. And I hope that this is an example moving forward of how school reuse sites, as well as our RFP process, often run through community development, that this could be a great example to guide other developers. And very, very happy and supportive of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wong. Other questions or comments, or would someone like to put forward a motion? Giancarlo?
This is Director. Oh,
okay. Go ahead.
This is Director Huang. I am putting in a motion to approve the project as it presented.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, Mr. Colicchio had his hand raised, I believe.
Yeah, I was just curious about the chimney that will not, obviously not be functional, but it will remain, and is it well preserved and
Yeah, the chimney will be preserved. The north, east, and south elevations are in relatively good shape, just need repointed. The west elevation of the chimney is where there were ladder runs that we'll be removing and we'll be infilling with some replacement brick.
it'll be sealed off, it won't be functional.
Right. Right, and we'll be capping it with a new roof to prevent water from getting down into the building. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colicchio. Any further questions or comments or discussion items? Not seeing any. Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund, Director Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing the restoration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now move on to our next applicant. Design review concept plan. Sorry. Concept plan located at 11101 Magnolia Avenue. Addition and site renovations for the Magnolia Clubhouse.
Yes, good morning. I'm Preston Buchtel and the architect on the project, and I'm also joined by representatives from Magnolia Clubhouse and the Kruger Group, which is the contractors, will be the contractors on the project and have been helping to develop this project, along with having a long history with Magnolia renovation work there, and actually University Circle area with the neighboring Hawkins schools. Don, is it possible for me to share a presentation?
Unfortunately, we don't have that capability.
Okay.
We do have both of your presentations that you submitted, one on the Clubhouse program and one on the proposed addition.
If you could go to the proposed addition drawings. The two documents that we shared was one, a document put together, which is going through now, was together Magnolia Clubhouse, which gives a little more information about what they do and sort of the history of the project. And then the other, the drawings of the proposed work we're looking to do. What we're looking is to create a joining expansion between the two buildings. It would connect all three floors, and it also includes a large central first floor public space. But to give you a little bit of background on the project, when Magnolia took possession of the property early in the 2000s, they set out on a capital improvement project, which included in 2009 adding a kitchen to the house. And later they turned a carriage house at the back of the property in 2014 into a clinic. And then in 2018, they completed interior renovations and restorations of the two existing homes, mansions. Don, if you could go to, let me pull up my own drawing. If you can go to number 5 in the drawings that presented. Yeah. Actually, hold on there a second. Just as I talk through the, if you could go back one, Don. Well, this is the proposed addition, but as I talk through the drawings, the building on the right is the east house, and the building on the left is what is referred to as the west house. If you could go to page 5. To give you a little bit of background and of the existing buildings, the east house, which you can see in the mostly on the right hand side there in the middle and on the bottom corner, was designed by Frank Mead. I don't have an accurate date as to when it was built. Currently, the building is primarily used for the members, clients of Magnolia Clubhouse to use. It involves programming as eating facilities, as a multimedia production facility on the 3rd floor of the building. The current building is primarily brick, as you can see. It's actually has quite a lot of detail to it. It has, wood cornice and moldings to it, and it has a very nice mansard roof. One of the elements that, in talking with the University Circle Landmarks Committee and Don Pettit, one of the nice features of it, and it's a little curious, is that there's an entrance canopy, which you can see in the middle photo there, and the photo to the right of that, which actually comes in on the side of the house. As part of the project, you'll see later, we're going to preserve that, but it's actually going to become interior to the new addition. I don't know how well you can see in the size of those photos, but on that building above the canopy, there's currently a fire escape, which will be removed as part of this project. So that won't be there anymore. And Also, the door coming out of the mansard roof, which will be removed, and the mansard will be restored to its original condition. I should say too, I guess, as we're looking at, this building, the addition allows for all the windows to be preserved, other than there are two small windows toward the back on the side of the building that go to bathrooms. That will be eliminated as part of the project, but all the windows, the entrance on the side, the mansard dormers will all be preserved. As I mentioned, in 2009, they added a kitchen to the back, which is in the top left photo on that page. It was done by Westlake, Reed, and Laskowski. The addition's materials are hardy board lap siding, cement board siding, and there's also places where the exposed foundation is split face block. When the addition was added, it was anticipated for this future joining expansion, which we're doing now. There was an elevator shaft added to be extended upon, and various connections in the basement. So it was designed with the idea that to accommodate this expansion that we're at now. The the west house of the building, which you can see mainly in the bottom left picture and in the center picture, has on the first floor, there's a resale shop, which is open to the public and operated by Magnolia. Many of the members and clients work there. Part of the vision of the clubhouse and their programs is to help their members with transitioning to work. So many of their projects, from the kitchen to the resale shop to the media production facilities and many other things, are all part of their programming to help with their members. So as I said, the first floor of this house is a resale shop that's open. The entrance is on the front. The second and third floors are primarily used for administrative purposes. So again, many of the members access because they work with staff as part of their training. If you could go back to maybe the first picture again, which kind of brings us to the joining connection. Some of you might recall, and actually there's a photo of it in the package that Magnolia provided, the PowerPoint. They had originally looked at doing this connector. I believe it probably came before you about 7-8 years ago. At the time, they did not build it, and over time they had some concerns about how the new addition was relating to the existing mansions, and how and there were some programming spatial changes inside. So we're back with a slightly different proposal. Basically, we're again looking to, one of the priorities is to connect all 3 floors of the building, and the fourth being the basement, for accessibility. But as part of this, we're also doing a large first floor space. The approach we're taking this time around to the design is that we're trying to let the 2 mansions be the stars of the show, trying to make a rather minimal impact between the 2 that blends well. The concept is, what you're seeing there in the middle is this central common space that'll be open to the public. We're sort of taking a kind of a pavilion approach to it. It's going to be glass walls, very open. So for seeing activities coming from the outside, but also for occupants inside to enjoy the lovely street Magnolia and activities going on outside too. So again, and we thought this was an approach that downplayed this connector, and again, tries to let the mansions be the stars while also minimizing the impact on them. If you can go to page 6, Don. Sorry for making you jump around here. This is a first floor plan. That's pretty much the whole first floor, other than some support spaces, is this common space, which will be a story and a half, 13-foot high ceilings. It's going to have multiple uses. It will contain a new cafe, which will also be, again, part of the work training programs that the facility uses, so members will be involved with that. It'll create a large space for members to relax in and enjoy when they're spending their day there. It also creates a new main entrance to the facility. And as part of it, I mentioned that existing canopy on the east house is now incorporated into it. If Don, if you can go to the second slide. Just give you a sense, this is from the common space and the existing canopy. One, we wanted to preserve this, and in early discussions and formal discussions with Landmarks, this was a very important element, which we agree. So we're trying to preserve this. One of the issues with it is it's in decent shape, but it has had issues over the years. At one point, the Kruger Group was involved in re-anchoring it to the main building because it was coming off. There's a lot of wood work on it, which has been affected by the elements over time. So we thought this would be a nice focal point and backdrop to this large common space. It will also help preserve this as we move forward and reduce maintenance on it. There will be a small bit of it that will still be exposed to the elements, but much less than it currently is. One of the other uses of this large common space is also for meetings. Magnolia Clubhouse has kind of become a star of the clubhouse system and a model, and as a result, they're often having meetings and conferences to which other facilities come and see the work they're doing and trying to understand better how they can do it too. So this space will also function for serving these kind of meetings. We're looking to have, a space that can handle at least 100 people periodically. So it's a multiple use space. I guess before I go to the next, address the second and third floor connections, you can actually kind of see in this on the left-hand side, the second and third floor connections are held back quite a distance from the front of the existing buildings. In fact, they don't start until you get to the back of the building. So if you could go to slide 7, Don. This is the second floor addition. As you can see, the sort of yellow beige is the second floor. This is going to be, again, additional space for programming and use by the members, while also providing a connector between the two buildings. We'll be extending the elevator and the exit stairs that were initially envisioned in the kitchen addition up through the building. The gray you're seeing there is to the bottom of the second floor addition is just the roof below of the common space. So again, the main thing is that the second floor connector is not starting till you get to the very back of the existing mansions. And if you go to the next slide, the third floor, similarly, the third floor is also held to the back. The third floor, again, is additional programming space. One of the elements they're going to be using up there is an exercise facility. They also are looking to do indoor horticultural programming. They currently do have gardens that they grow a lot of their herbs and some vegetables for use in the kitchen. And again, this is all tied in with the programming that the Magnolia is involved with their members. If you can go back to the first image again. One other element in this project too, to the exterior, and you can see in this picture, is that we're creating a raised entrance plaza across the front of the building. Currently, it's sort of it's a combination of things, basically what existed for the two buildings. There's a wood handicap ramp, which gives access to the west building on the front. And there's a ADA ramp hidden to the east side of the east building, which is quite a chore to get, or you have to come around from the back of the building and then basically snake all the way around the building. What we're looking at doing is doing a raised plaza at the level of the new addition. It'll be brick and stone with metal railings. We're going to, you can see on the left-hand side, there currently is a brick and stone stairs accessing the west house lined up with the entrance. We'll be recreating that. But we'll also be adding a ramp and a new sort of grand stair you can see in the center there, which will also help to identify the main entrance to the building. The raised plaza area will provide, there will be planting areas, but it will also provide space for tables and benches. Many of the members, particularly on nice days, like to sit outside during the day. Since there's also going to be a cafe, which will be open to the public, it'll provide outdoor seating for people making use of that. As far as the materials go, the new addition, we're on the front of the building for the common space, we are using a little bit of brick on the corners and to match the existing house. Not a lot of it, but a little bit. It's mostly a glass wall, and then we'll be capping it off with a metal panel system. It may not read very well, but above the glass on the common space, there is a overhang canopy across the front. For screening, this does face south, so we're trying to screen some of the light, but also give shelter from rain coming into the new main entrance. The addition to the back will be using the cement board, hardy board siding to match the kitchen addition, and where the foundation, because the grade drops off a little bit back there, we'll be using a split face block again to match the kitchen addition, which will also be capped off with the metal panel system. And I guess at that point, I'd like to open it up to your questions.
All right, thank you for the presentation. We'll begin with feedback from the local design review committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was reviewed by the Magnolia, the Wade Park Magnolia Design Review Committee 2 weeks ago. They mostly expressed support for the project. They think it's a vast improvement over the prior iteration that we saw 7 or 8 years ago. They think it's more sensitive to the historic houses. It retains the portico, which was always an issue of contention in the past. The one concern that they had to do with an existing stained glass window that's on the west building, and they want to make sure that that's addressed and studied, you know, and ideally retained as part of the addition. But otherwise, they support the project.
Excellent, thank you for that summary. We will open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Valerie Brothers, I will begin. I think I'm fully in support of this program. I think it's will be a wonderful addition to this organization and the neighborhood, and understand how and what you're trying to accomplish with this project. My feedback would be on some of the detailing of the architecture itself. My first comment would be the connection on the second floor. I think, or I would recommend you study, seeing if there's any way that you can get that connection within the addition itself. Right now, it feels like an awkward sort of extension of the program that's come out of the envelope of this new addition. It looks like there's a 2-story open below space on that rear section. If there's any way to repurpose that to connect it, I would really encourage you to, because I think it sort of takes away from the design you have here. I'd also recommend studying if there are ways. Sorry about that. If there's background noise here, if there's any way that you can reduce the profile of the central assembly space's roof, it feels very heavy and in conflict a little bit with the building on the west. If there's any way to reduce the depth of that, or give a little bit more breadth to the two buildings, I think it would strengthen your design. And if final comment is, if you were able to eliminate that second floor connection point, I'd recommend you expanding the number of windows so that it really feels like this glassy connection with just the minimal insertion of the hardy siding, where you're connecting to the roof areas. So I think you're trying really hard to respect everything that's there, and that would just really strengthen the design.
We'll be happy to look at that. For the common space, you're talking about the metal panels at the top?
Correct. They feel really heavy, and they're, awkwardly close to the cornice on the left side of, which is the west building, correct? Is that the east building?
Well, the picture is probably a little deceptive. There's actually that is about, I believe, 6 or 8 feet off of the west building. There's actually a space between that. The one thing on both the east and west sides of that central common space, we dropped the ceilings back down to allow, it shows a little bit better on the right side of that than it does. It's lost in shadows on the left side of that common space, but the roof steps down so that we can preserve the windows on both buildings along the sides. I don't know if that answers your question or not. That photo is a little deceptive, I think, in some ways. Sorry.
Sorry about that. I'm on mute. That does help, but I'd still encourage you to study it and show us a little bit more of that detail, because I think just having enough breadth, you're trying to respect these structures, which is excellent. We just want to make sure that there's enough space to truly do that.
As far as the second floor connector, we'll take a look at that. One of the limits I don't know if we can get it entirely within that back connection. One of the problems we have is how the kitchen is tied in. But we'll look at that to try to minimize it or get it back as what we can do with that.
I think that would really strengthen your design and let the addition be something very simple and minimal, and but capture everything you need within the what you're trying to accomplish here. Other feedback from the commission? Other feedback from the commission? I think we're being a little shy today. And so I guess what I have is, what you've received today is my feedback. Do you have any questions or comments related to that feedback?
Myself, are you asking, or?
Yes, you.
Well, no, that sounds good. We, one of our goals, obviously, we're looking at a conceptual review here. We're wanted to, feedback to see if we're heading in the right direction. Part of this being that so that Magnolia can then finalize their fundraising to actually build this facility. So we, as I said, as some of you are familiar with, there was a previous design, and they obviously didn't want to present that if that's not what they're going to build. So we're looking to get feedback to see if we're in the right direction. I take it from what you're saying, we're going in the right direction, and there's just some tweaks that we need to sort of try to address a little bit more. I would say the comment that Don brought up about the stained glass, the glass is in the west house. It's on the side of the building. It's on some stairs. One of the issues we're running into is, even though we're lowering the roof between that common space and the building to preserve the windows, of course, because it's on a landing, this window drops below it. We are going to preserve the stained glass, but to be honest, we're still reviewing the options. One option is to sort of enclose that with that whole window. It's a rather tall set of windows. Another option being closing it also and turning it into a light box, both of which will have some impact on the outside of the building, and we're a little concerned about what it looks like. So we're, even though it's not seen from the front, it's really just more something that people in the two buildings, which is one of the things we tried to preserve also in this, is that beyond just preserving the windows themselves, it's also just to give views from all the different spaces in the two buildings on the second and third floors. So we're trying to address how best to do that to save the stained glass, possibly looking for uses for it, possibly in a more central space like the common space, so it actually gets used or enjoyed a little bit more. But that is something we're studying right now to see how best to do that. I would say too, the stained glass needs a little repair. It's a little lighting and stuff is a bit aged, but that'll be taken care of. But anyway, we are going to preserve the stained glass, and I just need to the best way.
Well, we look forward to hearing your final solution when you come back. Last comment I forgot to make earlier is would be, Don, could you please go to the first floor plan? Okay, that's helpful. One second, I'm sorry, I'm going to zoom in. I think you have this, and maybe it was just deceiving in what I was looking at, that just aligning some of those spaces of the front elevation of that public common space and the west building, so that you're trying to extend those very traditional regimented aspects of the two buildings into this new addition. And then once again, I would keep at least 8 feet between the existing buildings and your central common area, so that people can still, appreciate the detailing of those existing buildings.
The one thing we're trying to preserve, and you could see in that section of the common spaces, interior-wise, we're trying to preserve as much of the brick as we can. One thing in the previous proposal by the previous architects was that they had approached the project from the standpoint that from a fire suppression standpoint of treating them as 3 separate buildings. What we've decided to do, because in the long run, which I should say as a result, interior, they ran it, they had to, get rid of windows, expensive fire shutters. What we're doing in this project is we're going to sprinkle all the buildings. And in fact, when the Kruger Group remodeled the existing buildings, they already put the sprinkler systems in. They haven't been hooked up yet until we do the final project. So what that allows us to do is now we don't have to get rid of the glass. So in the west building to the back by the cafe, there's a very large window. It's probably originally a dining room, I'm guessing, in the original mansion. We would have had to, I think, if I recall right, in the previous one, they were going to put glass block in place of it. We don't have to remove that window at all. We can preserve it so that, people from the west building in that space, which is the resale shop, can view into the common space and vice versa. So we're trying to preserve all those connections, to visual connections, to see between the two and just have a sense of openness. So again, that common space, sort of trying to approach as best we can as a pavilion, as a feeling of openness with just, roof over it between the two buildings. Which is, I should say, where we, of course, that's where we're running into a little problem with that stained glass, how best to incorporate that in and appreciate it.
Well, I think, everything you outlined are great options. We look forward to seeing that. I think you're in the right direction, but I would encourage you to really clean up the connection points here as the new addition connects to the east house, to really respect and continue the more classical simplicity of these structures, but in a modern way.
All right. Well, happy to take a look at that.
All right. And any additional questions or comments from the commission? If not, does the applicant feel like you received enough feedback from us to continue on with your design?
Yes, I appreciate it. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you. We look forward to seeing you back here in the future with your final application.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And everyone have a nice day.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next applicant, located at 10828 Drexel Avenue.
Hi, I'm Brett Parsons, and Alex had to step away, so I'll be presenting this concept plan. So this is the proposal for a demolition of the house 10828 Drexel Ave. We could go next slide. So as I said, we're seeking the approval of the complete demolition of both the 2.5-story family residential dwelling property and the detached 1.5-story garage. And these properties have been owned by the Glenville Development Corporation since 2013. However, this organization closed in 2015. This structure has been vacant since 2006. And since then, the city has received 4 formal complaints since 2009. And the city has had to board up this property on 2 separate occasions. And there are back taxes of, as you can see, over $18,000, and it's accrued board up fees as well. And our idea would be to demolish this, and then the remaining land would be cleared, graded, and seeded per city specifications. If we could go next slide. Here's just the site location and context. It's bounded by Drexel, Parkwood, Grantwood, and East 104th, just to get an idea of the area of where this property is. If we could go next slide. So it was built in 1910, as you can see from these photos. Obviously, vegetation is very overgrown around it. And in the bottom right photo, you can see the back of the house is kind of falling apart, and there are some windows that are pretty much stuck open. If we could go next slide, please. Here is the garage, which is in very poor condition. It's tilted practically and just really does look to be pretty nearing collapse. Go next slide. Here are just some photos of the front door, and sort of just the front porch. Yeah, as you can see, chipped paint everywhere and boards coming up and falling down on the porch. Next slide. So here are just some photos of the first floor. As you can see in the bottom left picture, there's a pretty gaping hole in the ceiling. Just shows sort of the poor condition that the house is in and the structure of the house. Next slide. Here is just the staircase leading up to the second level and just one of the hallways on the second floor. Next slide. Here is sort of one of the largest issues with this property is there's a huge hole in one of the second-story bedrooms. And so this is wide open to the elements and will get exponentially worse as rain and snow has easy access to enter into this room and just sort of destroy the integrity of the house. You could go next slide. Here are just more photos of the other second floor rooms and the bathroom. Next slide. Here are the stairs leading up to the third floor and just the hallway that is on that third floor. Next slide. Here is the room on the third floor, the hallways and the bathrooms. Again, you can just see a lot of chipped paint. Next slide. Here are the stairs leading down to the basement and the basement of the structure. Go next slide. Just more photos of the basement. Second. And next slide. Obviously, there's all the chipped paint, which could be a potential lead hazard, and contractors and people who have studied this house have found over 1,000 feet of asbestos pipe insulation that is throughout the walls, which is just important to note. Next slide. So the properties on either side of this house are in really good shape. They are kept up. Alex and I also visited this property last week, and one of the houses had a little child's play set that was sort of right next to the garage that was seeming pretty unstable. And so both houses on either side have young children. And if you can go to the next slide, the properties across the street are also well maintained. There also are 2 empty lots across the street that are always maintained and never cause much of an issue. Next slide, or that might be the last one. Oh yeah, so then our site plan would just be to demolish this structure, remove all the foundation, leave the site with clean backfill, topsoil, seed, and straw. And obviously we understand demolition is not sort of ideal and it's not necessarily our first choice, but it's just important to think about the fact that this property has been vacant for 15 years. Sally Martin, our director, said that to rehab the house would probably cost between $200,000 and $300,000, and it will only exponentially get worse as it is so open to the elements. And we also just want to think about the neighbors who are living in the houses next to this property, and a lot of whom have young children. And we just want to, and these are people who have complained about this property. And so we just want to be able to sort of give them answers and help those people out as well. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll begin with summary of the feedback from the local design review committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start by reporting on the site visit we did a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't hugely attended. There were 2 members in attendance from the design review committee and myself. We walked through the entire house and walked around the property. We did not get too close to the garage in the back because it appears that it might collapse if we just breathed on it. It's definitely in serious condition, and there's no question in my mind that it should come down. The house, we walked through the entire house. It's a mess. It was pretty much left by the, whenever the previous owners abandoned it. The interior has a lot of peeling paint. There's a lot of plaster damage especially in a couple of locations. There are a couple of major holes in the exterior walls, including that one. It was mostly concerning. It's not clear how that damage was done, whether it was in a storm or otherwise. The basement seems dry. It seems like the foundation's solid. So the interior actually feels better than the exterior. The exterior is where all the issues are. There's some major holes in the exterior, including the roof, back by the rear chimney. There's evidence that people have been in the house. So it's a mixed bag. It's always a difficult situation when we have to review houses in this kind of condition. I did speak to one of the neighbors this morning. I spoke to Paul Robinson, who's developing the house to the east, which is the one to the left of this house. He's working with the Restoration Society on restoring that house. He supports the demolition. His major concern is that people are coming and going from the house. There's also some illegal dumping being done in the rear yard, and there's also animals and vermin around the house. So he's mostly concerned about the dumping and the strangers coming and going. So he supports the demolition. The design review committee reviewed this 2 weeks ago. Again, they weren't prepared to take action at that meeting. I think they want to make sure that we do our due diligence in terms of potentially marketing the house or looking for another solution. I think we'd like to see Amico's weigh in on this house, whether or not they'd be willing to take it on or what they might think about the restoration costs. One member felt very strongly that it should go through the tax foreclosure process. But there's also an understanding that there are some major issues, the gaping holes, especially with the exterior. So that's where we've left it. So we're here today. I do think it may be appropriate to have an additional site visit if we can get more of the commission members to visit the house personally. We are aware of the complaints from the neighbors. I haven't had a chance to talk to the neighbor on the right yet, the neighbor to the west, but that's where we are right now.
Thank you, Dan. That's helpful. We'll open up the floor for questions and comments from the commission. Ms. Anderson, do you have feedback for us?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. This is so exasperating. It looks like a solid house with a lot of wonderful features. I mean, the sandstone porch, the interior still has a lot of, like beautiful door, the fireplace mantles, the built-ins, the space, you have nice big rooms. And, I know there are models out there for channeling these type of houses into, into responsible rehabbers' hands. It's just, you wait 15 years and it gets to a level of decay where it makes it really, really hard to make the numbers work. But, and I brought this up before, the land bank could probably engage in the model that Detroit Shoreway used, where I think they used to get them donated by the bank or the land bank. And then the nonprofit entity would sell it to, a vetted, responsible rehabber for like $5,000. And the $5,000 went to the nonprofit towards maintaining the program to continue cycling these homes into the hands of responsible owners. There's got to be a way we give out a lot of tax abatement. Is it possible to forgive the taxes or, foreclose on the taxes in an expedited fashion so these don't just sit here and rot? When I was looking this over, on this side of Drexel Avenue, on this entire block, everything else is intact. This would be the only missing tooth. And I hate to see that. It's just really frustrating. I mean, if this house was renovated, I'd want to live in it. I think it's a gorgeous house. But this should not sit there for over a decade. There's got to be a mechanism to intercede. I'm sure there's properties like this throughout the area that need immediate attention, and not 10 years later we have no choice but demolition. So those are my comments. And if there is another site visit, I couldn't attend the last one, but I would be eager to see this house. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Don, who was able to attend the walkthrough? I know I was not due to a conflict also.
It was only Jessica Beam and Matt Provolt from the Design Review Committee and myself.
Okay. Thank you for letting us know that. Director Wong?
Thank you. I agree with the assessment on the condition of the property. However, there are a lot of procedural concerns here that are preventing this property from moving into the proper hands. One is that the defunct owner, Glenville Development Corp., just no longer exists, and so it's been zombified. I think that, hearing from Director Martin, Building and Housing, tax foreclosure is a multi-year process at this point. And so I think one thing for consideration is, should this house stay in this condition for several more years? What is that impact? What is the impact for the neighbors? And also, what is the impact on the renovation cost? And so I think that's just worth considering, given that there are active families on this street. There is a hope that someone could buy it at sheriff's sale, but not sure how effective that will be too, unless it gets into the hands of someone that we really trust. We could ask Famicos. I just wonder about the timeline and the procedural aspects. The county land bank, as far as I understand from Director Martin, does not accept properties in landmark districts. Something to unpack another day.
That's interesting. I was not aware of that.
I just learned that as well. Again, I think that that's something that we'll need to unpack. And I can't speak for the county land bank. It's just something that I've learned recently. Thank you.
I think it would be worthwhile to have an offline, about that subject, because I think that would be good for the collective commission to understand. But we can do that another day, to your point, Director Wong. And I would agree with the comments that have been made. This seems like it obviously is a nuisance to the neighborhood, but this is appears to be a structure that could be renovated. With that said, what is the timeline until that can happen? And is it going to take it more into deterioration based on the timeline that someone could actually purchase this house? So I think a site visit would be warranted again, so that more could attend, Don, to what you're saying, so that we can speak more educatedly of the condition. Your pictures are helpful, but I wouldn't mind seeing it with my own eyes and try to attend. But I do think we need to continue to find to pursue if Famicos could take something on like this, that would be obviously ideal because they have a wonderful reputation of coming into situations like this and, transforming these houses into wonderful assets for the neighborhood. Don, is that something that you could, or the local committee could contact Famicos to have them look at this house?
Yes, we can reach out to Famicos. They were invited on the site visit. Hopefully we can include them in the future site visit. So yeah, we can work on that. Just procedurally, we're reviewing this on a concept level now. I think pending the site visit, this would have to go back to the local committee for final action. That probably wouldn't happen until our first meeting in September. But I do think we will arrange the site visit and also see if we can bring Famicos into the discussion.
If I could also just share, I think it's important that we are able to get in touch with the neighbors as well. I know that Don, you mentioned you were able to speak with one set of neighbors. I think engaging with the community would be really key also to understand the condition. Because it's a nuisance abatement, I think the worry is real about someone actually getting hurt. So I'm concerned from a health and safety perspective about this particular structure. I know it's very lovely, and it's very unfortunate that, this organization went defunct close to 8 years ago. And so there was a lot of time, a lot of lead time here that was lost. But from like a health, safety, public nuisance perspective, that's something that really concerns me.
Great feedback, Director Wong. I think your points are very valid and need to be considered along with everything else. And are just as important, if not more. Giancarlo?
Yes, thank you. I mean, we have these conditions, vast territories of Cleveland, unfortunately. And it's always said to demolish an historical building, but in cases like this, I mean, I don't really see any hope for it. It's totally beyond repair, I think. And Donald himself mentioned that walking into it is not even a safe consideration. And we could go for another visit, but I'm not sure what we would find. This is, and also this has been going on for years. It's not something, and these houses become terribly unsafe, an eyesore to the neighbors, potentially dangerous spots actually, I don't think anyone would go into a house, so it's not dangerous from that perspective of people occupying it illegally or inappropriately, but it is a danger to the neighborhood. They could collapse, they could fall apart, a storm could blow it over. And I personally, I think it should be demolished, and having another visit. I mean, I'd gladly go if the committee wishes to conduct another visit, but I don't really see the purpose of another visit. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Giancarlo. Just to be clear, Donnie said the garage was in poor shape and the house was not.
The garage is the one that's it's leaning toward the back of the property. I mean, visibly leaning. I don't know. I think there's a picture of it in this presentation. That's the one that should come down as soon as possible, in my opinion. The house is a bigger question.
Is it possible to have the garage addressed, even though this is conceptual?
Well, so I also just have a quick comment on that. is that it would be possible to demolish the garage and not the main structure, but obviously it would be a much more complicated, potentially more expensive, just to do that versus just demolishing both.
Oh.
Just to also throw that out
Yes.
there. It's possible, but a lot trickier just to sort of get all of the, supplies and such back there.
Okay, understand, point taken. Thank you.
Since this is conceptual review and not final review, are there any additional questions or comments from the commission? Does the applicant feel like you received enough feedback from the commission to continue the development of the project?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Excellent. I think we have a little legwork on all sides before your next presentation. Okay, thank you. We look forward to seeing you back here again soon. That conclude our conceptual review, or we have one more? Okay, so that concludes our conceptual reviews, and we'll move on to administrative reports.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure I have anything today. I would like to report that Emily Spezia Schwiff, our Ohio History Corps member, will be finishing up her work on August 22nd. She submitted her final survey report to the State Preservation Office, and she's just finishing up a couple of her National Register questionnaires. So she's essentially done with the project we hired her for. So I just want to say thank you to her and wish her well in the future. And in 2 weeks will be the end of year celebration in Columbus, where we'll give her an official send-off.
Excellent. Well, Emily, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Emily, thank you for all your hard work. I know it's greatly appreciated by Don and Carl, all the survey work that you do, and the work for the National Registry questionnaires that really benefit them tremendously. So that's all I was going to say. And good luck. Don, do you have other?
Yes, it's hard to remember the bigger picture sometimes. Speaking of demolitions, we have a major issue developing in the Miles Park Historic District. There's a church. It was originally the Miles Park Methodist Church. It was built 150 years ago. A week ago, it suffered a major roof collapse. Essentially, the west slope of the roof slid into the street all at once in its entirety, and so it's the building department has sent inspectors out. It has been condemned. I'm told that it's not quite a forthwith yet, and it's not quite an emergency, but half the roof is missing. The rear gable, the brick gable on the rear of the building is no longer supported by much, so that may be an issue. I'm told that the exterior walls are sound, but that's not going to last very long without a roof on the building. And it's going to become, if it isn't now, it's going to be a safety hazard in the very near future, if it ever rains again, or worse. So we have to figure out what to do with this. I think we've reached out to the Cleveland Restoration Society for their advice. The building department is going to look at it again. They're going to inspect the interior to see what the situation is. But it's very serious, and I'm afraid, we may lose a very significant church building if we don't find some kind of a stopgap, a solution here. And right now I don't know what that is, because it won't be a cheap solution. whatever it is, I don't think, it's not a matter of just putting a tarp on the building or, so I just wanted to make the commission aware of that issue right now.
That's really interesting. I'm sorry if I missed, you said this, is the structure occupied or is it unoccupied right now?
It's unoccupied. I think it's been for a few years. I haven't approached the ownership yet, and there's some ambiguity about who the actual owner is right now. But I think it's been closed for several years at least. So I'm sure it's been neglected. I don't know what caused this failure exactly, but it wasn't the recent storms we had. It was sometime early last week. So I don't know what happened. I think we're lucky that no one was in the street at the time. Currently, the water department is working on repairs on East 91st Street. So they've got a good section of the street torn up for new pipeline. The property to the east of the building is a vacant lot. So that's not so much of a concern, but you know, if there were another collapse on the west side, it would fall into the right of way again. So yeah, that's all I know at this time, I think. And I can share pictures with the commission. I went out there a couple days ago, and someone sent a drone up and took aerial photos of it. So I can share those with the commission as well. But we may have to act on this very, very soon.
And is there any opportunities through the Sacred Landmark group?
I don't know that yet. I mean, I know CRS is not aware of any emergency funding that's available. You know, there has been some discussion about scaffolding the building to at least protect it from further collapses, but that it's you know, that's something, I think that's a solution that the city would have to take on. So right now I don't know, but you know, I think the inspectors have to go and look at it again. The building has significant stained glass windows. And, you know, but I think it's too early to talk about a salvage plan. I'm hopeful that we can find some interim solution to stabilize the building. But that may be the best we can do.
Donna, what's the address?
It's 9105 Miles Park Avenue.
And Carly does like churches.
I know.
Yes, I've heard that.
Unfortunately.
I think it's made for you, Giancarlo.
I'll go take a look at it.
Thank you. That would be great. I wish it were in the condition of the church you do own. It would be a different story.
Yeah.
So sorry to end on a bad news note, but I think that's all I have unless anyone has questions.
Don, are you with us for our next meeting?
Yes, one more.
One more. All right. Go ahead.
And now that I've learned how to run the meeting myself, it's a shame that I have to leave now.
How about one more year, Don?
Yeah.
You have to convince my wife, Kevin.
Okay. Well,
He's on it.
make sure that she shows up to our party.
She will be there for sure. Whenever or whatever that is.
Hey, are we having a party?
There are rumors that are being kept very secret from me, so I don't know at this point.
Okay, well, it's good. I like secret parties. That's good.
But
We'd like to pull everybody from the commission together so that we can, I don't know if that's being done through City Hall. I know we've thrown it around here, but I will take on trying to get something organized so that we can do that. And would just love, you know, some times from you, Don, that would work for you so that we can bring everybody together I think it's been very interesting having new members join the commission and actually never getting to meet them in person. So I think it's a great opportunity to celebrate you and bring this whole group together and for that.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to doing that.
Oh, we're gonna miss Don so much.
Yeah.
Agree. Who's gonna answer all the questions and keep us on point, right, Don? Like you and Carl are
Well, that's Carl's job now.
Carl.
He is the
Carl's
man now.
on deck.
yeah. All right, well, we will connect offline on that one, Don, for some dates so that we can get that planned. And we'll look forward to next meeting, or maybe not look forward to next meeting since it's your last.
That sounds great. I also want to say that we've started the interview process for the second employee. So hopefully we'll have someone on board before I actually leave.
Excellent. And that's the second employee. What about your position?
That's still to be determined. That will be the third step in this process, I think. But we're working on it. The director is working on it. We'll keep you posted.
Excellent. I'm sure Director Long will definitely do that. So we look forward to hearing more on that also. Anything else to report today? Or shall we adjourn the meeting?
I'm good if you guys are.
All right, not hearing anything. Thanks everyone for being part of today's meeting. We're going to adjourn for today. We'll see everyone in a few weeks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care, please.
See ya, bye.